Hi, everyone, and welcome to UX Portfolio Coffee Hour. Get hired before leaving boot camp. So excited that people are here and joining us. Um, Hi, my name is Emi Lantz. I am a senior UX designer at Whisker. I am also a ADP list mentor as well as a Prime Academy mentor, and I've been mentoring for a couple years now. So you might ask yourself, UX Portfolio Coffee Hour, how to get hired before leaving boot camp. Like, who are you to say any of this stuff, right? and well, I did attend a design boot camp, and I did receive a job offer before I left boot camp. So that was pretty cool. And then like I said, I mentor and teach at boot camps. And then I'm actually starting an apprentice shop that's launching in 2023. So that's a little bit about me. I want to introduce one of my favorite, and I'm going to say former mentees, because I feel as though like you mentor me as much as I mentor you. Uh, I'll have her talk about herself a little bit, but Kirstie Darko.
Yes. Hi, guys. I'm so happy to be here with you all. I am a creative recruiter with an amazing staffing agency called Onward Search. I have over 6 years of experience in recruitment, but my first tech experience as a recruiter actually started out in Google in 2017. Currently, I am specialized in all design disciplines. So it's including but not limited to UX, UI, product, visual, graphic, you name it. I know it. I've definitely sourced for it. So I definitely have the subject matter experience in these roles.
Yeah, you absolutely do. When we first met, so we met through ADP List, which is a mentorship website. And when
Yes.
we first met, the just some of our conversations just felt as though, we had some secrets, or we had some type of our conversation should have been out loud, if that makes sense. So today it's really exciting that we get to have one of those conversations out loud. And so thank you for joining me, Kirstie.
Totally. I'm so happy to be here.
So I think the first thing that we want to talk about is how important it is to compete before leaving boot camp. And I think it's important to do that because the landscape of design is so competitive right now. It's ever evolving. And I think we can all understand that in UX it is definitely oversaturated. I think Kirstie, you had a couple numbers there.
Yeah. I mean, just to kind of paint a picture on how competitive and oversaturated it is, especially in this job market. So currently, there's over 13,000 UX, UI product designers listed on LinkedIn, all stating that they are open to work. And they all have 3 years or less of experience looking for junior entry level roles. So as of today, there's only 1.9 open positions listed as an entry or junior position, and that also includes internship. So if my math is mathing right, only less than 7% of you guys will actually be able to land a job at this moment.
Yeah, I think that's important to point out that, 10 years ago, it may have been the narrative may have been, hey, like you may not get the design job you want, or you may not get the design job you want at the best company that you're super in love with. And I think in the last 10 years, it's become you may not be able to get into design. It's that competitive. Um, not everyone that goes to boot camp these days is going to become a designer. And I think it's scary, but I think once we accept that, once we're kind of aware of that reality, we can really start moving through that.
Agreed.
So we know breaking into the design industry is difficult. If you're a junior designer, you know that this is a difficulty, and that not only is it about your portfolio, but it's all these soft skills as well. It's the networking aspects of things, and all of these things kind of culminate into being a difficult place to get into. Not to mention, I just did a talk on marginalization. I did a talk about just how difficult it is for people in marginalized groups to enter the design industry. It's even more difficult for them. So just keep in mind that this is an industry that is evolving, like I said, but it's also so saturated that you're going to have to compete before you even graduate these days. So Kirstie, how am I supposed to be better than the average junior designer?
Gosh, yeah, that's really tough. It's really gonna take a lot of grit, but also you want to have a great portfolio that really
Mhm.
helps identify a lot of your analytical skills. Um, right now, you're competing against those who are trying to get into the same field as you, but also those who are already in that field. Those jobs are not just only for those who are not working, it's for anyone who's the right fit. So you definitely want to set the bar much higher for yourself when you're presenting.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to state that, like, I have a poll right here. Let me go ahead and share that poll. One of the questions is, uh, do you look at other designers' portfolios for inspiration? So let me publish that poll and let's see. I can already guess what kind of the answer is going to be. But one of the ways to be a little bit better than other junior designers is to stop designing for other designers. Uh,
Yes.
so many times we see this. So many times we see the same. I mean, how many times do you see the exact same design process, almost the same words?
It happens more often than not. And it feels very templatized, or like you could just tell there's a checklist to it. If I mention the overview of this project, who was on the team, who I was, what were I doing, going into your problems, and then you go into your research, you start synthesizing, and then going into ideation. I mean, it feels very much predictable. And that's what you want to do, is you want to disrupt that predictable look of your portfolios. Designing is nitty gritty, and it's not necessarily, going step by step. Sometimes you have to start, you know, ideating and then realizing, okay, now we need to put effort into research. It really should be kind of that messy, and really to identify how do you make a really great product for your users. And if you really start thinking about it as more like a business case, and how you really start to advocate for your process and why you're doing what you're doing, and why this is probably the best step, for the business and for your users, that's really how it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you're touching on is the design process. And it does seem as though the design process become a template, and it's become a B, C, D, E, F. And what I try to tell, my mentees and people that I, just try to mentor is like, hey, like the design process is not a blueprint, right? It's a guideline. And like you said, sometimes you have to go back. Sometimes you have to go back to research. Sometimes you have to go back to the feature roadmap. Sometimes you have to go and look into other things that you may have missed out on. And I think a lot of the times I see portfolios that have that templated design, and it really doesn't. It seems disingenuous at times.
Yeah.
And I think that leads us to our next statement, where I think it's really, really, really important that you have a strong business case and a strong problem statement.
Agreed. And just to kind of touch on that, what I mean by having a business case, I'm not saying to
Mm.
have a design that is very corporate feeling. Not at all. Really, what you're doing is just justifying why you are making these design decisions. You're really putting your design thinking forward, and kind of explaining as to why these processes have to be in this way. And as a designer, you're most of the time you are advocating for your work. You have to influence and explain to the CFO, or explain to a product owner, someone who's in a C-suite level, as to why we should make these changes, or make these moves in this direction, or maybe have more research behind it. Sometimes the budget doesn't call for it. How are you going to influence that decision? That really should be showcased in your case studies.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the most important things that you can do. And I think what you have to really end up uh, in your narrative, in your portfolio when you're doing a business case is convincing, right?
Hmm.
You're the point is to convince the person looking at your portfolio that the decisions that you made were good ones, right?
Right.
And I think it's super important that in order to do that, you have to start with a problem statement. And I think we were talking maybe the other day, and you said it's also important to go back to that problem statement.
Yeah. So oftentimes when junior designers have a problem stated listed right before they get into any of their processes, most of the time, those are really going to be assumptions. Those are the things that you believe is going to be a problem for users that you really want to identify. And really, what you should use this moment for when you're doing your research is really kind of tying back to, is this still a problem when you're doing your research? And sometimes that's not really the problem. You may identify the true problem in your research. And it's okay to say, after you've done your research, what I thought was a problem is not actually a problem. Maybe it's a minor problem, but the real problem is going to be this based on what we found. And that's how you really disrupt, the design process. This is how you disrupt businesses. When you become a person who can really say, if we do this, that's different than our competitors, we have a leg up on the business. And that's really a mindset. If you start shifting that thought process, you know, open the gates. Seriously, things change for you.
For absolutely, and I think that that's one of the things like I see a lot of times with the designers that come from business or come from marketing have this already in the bag, right?
Yeah.
And they're really good at bringing it back to that problem statement and saying, all right, so here's the competitive analysis, here's the SWOT, here's all the different things that we've looked at, and should we adjust this problem, right? Should we
Yeah.
adjust the problem statement? Like sometimes you have to adjust the problem statement, and sometimes there is no problem.
Right.
And I think it's important to point that out.
I mean, that's how it is in business. It's things are always fluctuating. You have to have a certain level of flexibility, and agility to recognize that, sometimes there isn't a problem, but, you know, sometimes problems change. We are ever evolving. And so does, society, and our business should be evolving with it.
Absolutely. So solving the right problems with the right solutions, uh, this just kind of goes back to make sure there's a problem and make sure that you're doing the right solution. And the way to do that is to go back to that problem statement. So one of the question is to kind of evaluate whether or not you're making a problem statement that is good, is my product solving a problem for my audience and considering the business case? Okay. If you look at your portfolio and you're able to ask this question, and hopefully the answer should be yes.
Yes.
Almost every single time. Another question is, and I think it was the second time that we talked together. We were just kind of, shooting. And I heard you say, is there really a problem? Or is this just a project you're trying to get through? And it blew my mind because I mean, I'll let you speak on this, but I just see so many designers that it's just, this is a boot camp. I have to do the boot camp project. Here's my boot camp project. Here's my design process, right?
Yeah, it feels very evident. Like, you could almost, as a recruiter, you could almost tell, like, this person might be a junior. This person might have just came out of boot camp. And one of those things that kind of triggers those feelings is really those objectives and how they outline those problems. And typically what I see is just, it doesn't make sense for this to be a real product. I mean, I've seen people do apps for, pets, or, doing some type of like food delivery service. And granted, those could be really great products, but how you outline that is going to speak for itself. I mean, you really can't see it.
Exactly. I think it's important that we start, I just took a little gander at the poll that we said, if you're looking at other designers, portfolios for inspiration. And I think that that's one of the biggest mistakes in portfolios, because we're all just trying to get through some projects, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's not a bad thing, right? I don't think it's a bad thing that you had to do some projects to get through boot camp so that you can get a job. But I think that analyzing your decision making of choosing that project, I think
Yeah.
sometimes we don't even go to we have to go all the way to the beginning. And sometimes some of these fake projects, or some of the projects they give you in design school, there is no problem. And it almost seems like a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, where you may fail just because you picked that project, right? And
Yeah.
so always analyze, is there really a problem, or is this just another step on my way to, getting a job?
Yeah. And, to add to that, there's also a missing thoughtfulness and intention to the work. When you really think about, have I exhausted all my resources to make sure I am providing the most accurate, thoughtful product out there? Like, if I were to really pick out a project to say, I'm going to invest in this, would you really invest in this? Is this worth your money? If it's not, if you're saying no, then go back to the drawing boards and really think
Yeah,
about that.
absolutely. Absolutely. So I think another thing is on how am I going to be better? So we looked at how am I going to be better than a normal junior designer. The problem statement, we discussed that a lot at length. I think it's important that you also, utilize the business case. You stop designing for other designers, right? Stop looking at the aesthetic and making sure that that's the most important thing. Or my best friend had a Webflow, and so I need to make sure that I do Webflow. But I think this one right here is maybe the most near and dear to my heart. Obtain real life collaborative experience. And just before you speak on that, I'll say why I think this is the most important thing. When I was in boot camp, there was not a lot of people that would break the mold, right? So you were given these creative proposals, and then you would do a project. And it was normally a fake project. And I remember one time I just kind of thought to myself, like, why am I doing fake projects? Like, I want to do like a real one, like, just because I know that it's different. I know that a client, like talking and communicating and delivering to a client, is a completely different experience than having a faux client, right? Or a client like United Airlines or something really big, you know? And so one of the things that I ended up doing was I contacted a band, and I was like, hey, I'm in this boot camp. Like, it'd be really cool to do your branding and your web design. Maybe we could do an app. Maybe we could do some, I don't know, shirts or something, album covers. And I was like really scared, and I didn't know how they would react. And they ended up flying me out, and I did all of their branding. I did their album cover and their t-shirts and their,
Wow.
e-commerce site. And to this day, people still ask for that design project in like a PDF or form or something. I'm like, that was in boot camp, and I do not have access to those materials anymore. So obtaining real life experience goes such a long way.
Yeah, 100%. But also you could create your own space just like the way you did
Mhm.
as well. I really encourage all junior designers, even if you're out of a boot camp, to really start networking and engaging with other designers, but also start engaging with other developers and engineers. That is
Mm,
really what you want to like start honing in on, is understanding those cross collaborative teams and understanding their pain points, because I guarantee you what you're designing may not be feasible for a engineer. And also, someone who maybe is in project management, have them kind of establish timelines for you, because sometimes you're under some serious deadlines that you have to compromise. And once you start to realize that there is a fine line between compromising, advocating, and just trying to push out a thoughtful product, you have gained real world experience that you will not find in a boot camp.
absolutely. And I think most of that real world experience, if I have to be honest, from a designer's perspective, feels negative, right?
Mm,
What like when you learn what it takes to participate in a collaborative effort, and you learn how to translate your design to code, you're gonna learn how to compromise your vision, right?
yeah.
Um, I mean, I feel like 75% of being a designer is that negotiation with a developer. And I feel like even if you were to just call it a developer friend and be like, how would you make this? How would how would you do this? Is this feasible? Those questions are the start of collaboration. And it's really important that you get yourself involved. Um, like you were saying, finding others to work on with a project, it's some part networking, some part collaboration, but then it's also building a real project. Um, and I think that legitimately, first of all, it inspires me as a senior designer to see people go out of their way of doing something like that. But secondarily, there aren't many ways to do that outside of your own gumption. And
Yeah.
so what it does is it builds those potentials, it builds relationships. And one thing that I like to say is like, hey, if you love it so much and you love working together, like start a mini junior designer agency or something. You know what I'm saying? There's no downside to working with other people. Even if it's another designer, even if it's a product manager, working with other people is going to be one of the only things that really help you stand out compared to other junior designers.
Exactly. I mean, you really have to think, do you want to be that 7%? And how much work are you willing to put towards this career? Because it's so competitive, and you really have to go above and beyond if you really want to get your foot into an interview. And that's not even getting the job. You have to get to that interview space, and you have to excel at having that storytelling and having a really great portfolio and really advocating and explaining in detail like why you made your decisions and how does that tie back to that business case that we mentioned before.
Yeah, and a lot of the times you can't even have a grasp on that business case without working with others, right?
Correct.
Um, I don't. I think that's one of the things that I think is amazing about Prime Academy in Minneapolis is that they have full groups working on group projects almost the entire time, and the amount of collaboration really is amazing, and it speaks to how many people get jobs outside of that. Uh, Versus if you see a lot of the online boot camps, it's very difficult for people to work with each other because of virtual nature, and there's just more difficulties in that way. So uh, find a boot camp. It goes all the way to the beginning. I think all of this stuff goes to maybe the beginning of your journey, but if you can find a boot camp that allows collaboration, and that doesn't allow collaboration, but encourages collaboration. And I think that that's a really, really important part to having a good portfolio, but not only having a good portfolio, but having a recruiter like you go, hey, I can tell 100% that this person put in, a little bit extra effort.
Yeah, it's evident.
So there's different ways of doing that. And I think it's really important that you don't have to just do it yourself. Um, but also, these are just internships, apprenticeships, and pro bono projects are all so important ways to gain that experience. And you can do this while you are in boot camp. And I encourage that you do these things while you're in boot camp. If you have the time, look for internships. If you have the time, look for apprenticeships. If you have even more time, do those pro bono projects with other people. Try to find, use UXPA or any networking to your advantage to try to gain an extra step, an extra yard on some of the other junior designers. So what's the end game? I think for me, the end game is a lot less about getting a job and it's a lot more about gaining real life experience. And I think that this is true because gaining real life experience, there is no downside, right? Getting a job in design has really become a formula. If I do this, then I will get this. If I do this, that, and I think when you transfer your energy from, hey, I need to just get a job, I need to have a portfolio and have the boot camp and then I can get the job. And you transfer that into, hey, I need to gain real life experience. I need to collaborate. I need to have a good problem statement. And that all comes with reality, with a real project, with real people. And I think it's important that is a really important part of your journey, at least prior to the start of you looking for a job.
Yeah. And, in boot camps, unfortunately, they don't necessarily give you those real life experiences. And those are things you're going to have to really attain for yourself. You have to take initiative to really learn what it takes to be in the seat. Because once you get out of boot camp, the real world business, it is totally different. So you really want to prepare yourself and really learn a lot, as much as you can, especially when you're going into your interviews, because you really want some of those tangible information that you can really speak to from those experiences that really makes you a qualified candidate for these roles.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Kirstie, with all that being said, and it's not really about getting the job, but what do I need to get a design job?
Yeah, so experience is definitely a big proponent of it, right? But we really need to talk about how do recruiters really find you? And you really want to put as much information as possible, especially on your LinkedIn, in order for us to really collect you into our pipeline of potential candidates. And, once we kind of done that sourcing, we start looking at your portfolios. And when we look at your portfolios, we really get pretty much the sense and feel of your work, the aesthetics of it. Do I get a good understanding of your capabilities and what your work might look like before I actually jump into that particular project? If that is enough for me, I will go ahead and continue on. But there's been times where I've looked at portfolios on that landing page and it was just off, and I would literally disregard that portfolio as a candidate who may not be the best fit for this role. My clients are looking for someone a little bit more higher level, so you have to display that from the jump. And if we're going into your projects, what I'm going to really look for is a strong problem statement. I'm going to look at your design thinking, looking at those analytical skills. Does this person tie back to that problem statement or that business case? Do they have a good rooted understanding of their design process? And do they feel like they have a good enough foundation to execute the job? And that's really what's going to be key here. Granted, you may get maybe less than 5 minutes with a recruiter looking at your portfolio, but if you really want us to be invested into your work and really look into it, that engagement piece is going to be so crucial for you. And what I mean by engagement, I really mean is interaction. Is there scrollable features? Is there a clickable feature? Is there a short video? Is there something that's gaining my attention that says, okay, I should probably continue looking into this deeper because there might be something else I could click on that really kind of shows me that there is, this person's thinking outside the box. This person understands that if they want my attention, they have to grab it. And those are grabbable, tangible, things that you could put in your portfolio that really makes you stand out. It goes against the norm. And that's what I'm looking for, is someone who can really think outside the box, who's going to be that 7%, right? And that's the ones I'm really targeting. Who can I present in front of a hiring manager that has the ability to not only showcase their work, but I feel like they will be a really great, potential to be in the seat.
Yeah. Wow. That's really, thank you for that.
That was a lot.
That was a lot. That is why we're here. That is why I love talking to you. I think, just you were touching on a little bit of, what do you look for? And that interactivity is something that I don't think designers really think about, especially me. I think we kind of get stuck on the UI. We get stuck on the visual design and the aesthetic, and we second guess ourselves. And I think, like, junior designers, take a breath with me, because I'm not looking too much into your UI. UI is something that I can teach you. One thing that I can't teach you is risk taking. I can't teach you perseverance. I can't teach you how to keep going even though it gets tough, right? Those are all things that you need to narratively bring to me. And I think that you pointed it out, STAR, right? Which is situation, yes, task, action, and results. So that's how your narrative should be structured. Situation,
correct,
task, action, and results. And your narrative has to be structured like that so that I understand where you're coming from. I understand that you have a learning spirit. That's pretty much every single designer. We are all empathetic. We all have a learning spirit. However, I need to know the other values, the other things you're going to bring to the table in my team. And I need to know how I'm going to work with you. So when we talk about why it's important to collaborate, when we talk about why it's important to network and find others and work with others, it's because that's what you're going to be doing for the rest of your career. And how am I supposed to know if you can play well with others if you've never done it before? So I think it's really, really important that is something that you take to the bank. But I also think, yesterday we were talking a little bit, networking came up, really important. But there's something about luck and social media that I think I was like thinking about. I went to bed last night and I was like, luck and social media. Why are both of those things feel like they're the same or almost, but you made a really good point that social media is now a really good place in terms of marketing yourself.
Yeah. We are now invested in social media. Whether it's, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, you really want to advertise yourself and your work, which is why it's really important to have a link to your portfolio on these social media platforms. You want to be as marketable as possible. You want to be able to have your work in the hands of as many people as possible, because people talk. And when you become more notable, that's when you really start to get recognition, right? And a lot of the candidates that I've come across too, I've also been through LinkedIn, just from engagement, and when you're interacting with other influencers or those who are in that same space as you, they're going to help open the door for you. You just have to meet those people. And sometimes some of these roles that you've been dying to have, it's based on a referral. Someone referred you to this position, and so sometimes that luck piece too also has a factor into it. And it's really that timing. I met a junior UX writer who just got out of boot camp, just fresh out of it, literally a month beforehand. And she and I had talked for maybe like 2 months prior to a role that just popped up. But because we had such a great engagement, I remembered her. She not only did she have a great portfolio where she made it so digestible for me to read it. She had a great storytelling presence. She utilized that star format that you had mentioned. She was memorable. And because I had engaged with her so many times on social media, I remembered her for that job. I said, hey, this job came up about, are you still available? She's like, yes. As soon as I submitted her, she had an interview just like that. And she's now working with a Fortune 10 company. I mean, that is rare. That's luck. If that's not luck, I don't know what is. This was meant for her. But that's the type of luck I'm talking about. You know, those opportunities was created because she went above and beyond to really put herself out there.
Make your own luck, right?
Yeah, you have to.
And you have to. It's so important to go out and do those things. It's interesting. I really try to tell people like ADP list or just being mentored or finding somebody to be mentored by is one of the most important things that you can do for your design career. I have a mentor. I'm always going to try to be mentored. I'm always going to try to mentor others because it's networking, but it's also learning and it's also therapy. And so it's all these different things. And I think it's really important to say that when you put yourself out there, when you start networking, when you start making those connections and relationships, who knows what can happen? I had somebody just say, hey, like, I work for Whisker, which is an amazing pet company. And we make robots and we do all this different stuff. And I had somebody on ADP list just contact me and just go, I'm a fan, right? I'm not looking for a job. I just want to let you know, like, I want to get into pets. I want to do what you do. And guess who I'm going to call once that person graduates from, their degree with a human computer interaction degree, I'm going to call them because I know that person is passionate about pets. And in my industry, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for somebody who has the empathy for pets, specifically cats. And if you put yourself out there, if you make the right connections, if you try to be mentored, you're going to succeed. And I think you should trust the process that we're trying to lay out here.
Yes.
So there are some caveats. I want to point the caveats out. All right. So the ability to take time to build a portfolio is privilege. And this is all best case scenario advice. I just had a long talk about marginalization and how difficult it is to break into tech, how people have different areas. They could have different socioeconomic backgrounds, race, gender and sexual identity, you name it, location. And there's this thing called, tech privilege, which people have. We have it right now. I'm in a room that has heat and water, and I have a computer with internet, and this is all privilege. So understand that the ability to take time out of your life to build these portfolios is privilege. And if you do have the privilege, please utilize it, because not everybody does. All right, we're here. We're finally here. We're at the portfolio review.
Woo!
I do have to share my screen in a secondary way. Oh, we had somebody. Here we go. That's our first entry. We're going to take a look at a few, and I guess I'll go with the first one that somebody sent in. Huda, thank you.
Yes,
Let me go ahead and share my screen. Wow, I like it.
I love that background.
Me too. I'm really digging the aesthetic. And if I have to say what I love most about when I first get into this, first of all, safe space is awesome. So thank you for putting that there. But I see a lot of abouts, or I see a lot of the introductional screens, right? That will have a ton of information about the person, right? And the thing that I love about this is that I know the name Huda. That's the branding. So I don't need to know your name right off the bat. I can see all right here that you are a UX UI designer and a researcher. I can see where you're located, and then I can see how you value yourself and like what you're carrying in your narrative. And so what I'm going to be looking for throughout this portfolio is that you're empathetic, that you're unique, that you're collaborative, and all those things that you're saying.
Yeah, for me, I also really love the aesthetics as well. But just taking a quick look at some of the projects that she has outlined, um, white space. And I feel like we don't really talk about that enough, but like just the spacing of it just feels very clean. It's very digestible. I can kind of choose like what projects I feel like would be more applicable to the roles I'm looking for. Right off the bat, I could tell that her strength probably lies more in desktops, as she only has like only one mobile app design on her portfolio, which of course that's going to draw me to that one mobile app product that she has. And that could be intentional. It could just say, this is probably my best mobile app. I'm going to present this, and you have to think about that is like, are you intentional with your work? Is there a certain sincerity to it as well? But I mean, it's a very focused point, and it's smart. If that's what she did, it was very smart of her. If she is trying to highlight that I have this one great mobile app, if it's going to get me in that door, it's going to be this one. So she does a great job of just that overall. So it's going to entice me to look into it.
What's really interesting is that a lot of people go, hey, should I not have like these, my Bootcamp portfolio pieces on there? And I'm always like, no, you should definitely have that, because it's like, I can see that this is a lot better than this. Yeah. And I can tell how much you learned in bootcamp. Like, that's what I want to know is like, wow, like, look how much you were able to grow, right? Would you say that that NOM would be the first thing that you click on then?
It would be.
Nice. Love the project overview. And I do love I would like if this was maybe less of the branding and more of the actual app itself.
So, what I want to say about this portfolio, which, by the way, Huda, great job on this. What I would have liked to see is really a strong problem statement. As she mentions here what the goal for the user is, which I guess is also interchangeable for the problem. And she listed as a user that is a homebody, I want a food app that would enable me to explore and purchase food from various local restaurants so I can satisfy my cravings and support my community with a tap of my finger from the comfort of my home. It's nice, but I could tell this is a very junior portfolio. And this is what I meant. It doesn't necessarily have a statement that is supported by the business. This feels very much more like, this is clearly for you. This is something that you like. This is what you want to do. And that's totally fine. But that statement does need to be just a little bit stronger. Because that's important, because if it doesn't really say, I can invest in this, how do you expect a hiring manager to say, is this really worth it? Is this really, does it tie back to what I'm looking for? Is this what I'm doing? So definitely kind of rethink that one and maybe strategize on how you really want to portray this project.
Right. And I think one of the things is DoorDash, Grubhub, right? There's a lot of competition and oversaturation Postmates in this market. And so, the goal is to explore and purchase food, but what is the positioning? What is the difference? And I can see it right here with support from my community. Bring that out. Somehow bring that out with the problem statement. Maybe we can rewrite it to say, modern day food applications are not supporting our communities as much as they should be. And so this application is, etc. And I think that that's a problem, right? The problem is, and it's true, that DoorDash and Grubhub, they kind of screw over the drivers. They kind of screw over the food delivery places, and
Yeah.
that could be the problem statement. And I would instantly be like, you're right. There is no community in DoorDash, right? And so I think it's important to point that out. As we go along, obviously we have the design process here. It's important to do that. I would also, if there was one more thing I would say about this, you do want to match your color palette within your portfolio to the branding of each one of your brands, just so it's a little bit less jarring. But overall, I mean, this is what I would be looking for. I would want to know this information. I really like the lo-fi GIFs. I don't think people do prototype GIFs enough, or hi-fi GIFs enough. And so it's really important that we do that as well.
Yeah. And I also want to mention what I didn't quite catch was the challenges that you faced while kind of, designing this. Like, what were those? Did you do a usability testing, and the people that were testing it out for you, did they say X, Y, and Z? How do you kind of go back to the drawing board and kind of do it over again? Or, when you were doing your wireframes, did it feel like, what you're putting out there is exactly what the user going to see? It almost has to be intuitive for them as well. You really have to be thoughtful and intentional about every single thing that you're doing. But everything that you're doing also has to tie back to your research. Your research showed you this, hence you did this as a result. Keeping that storytelling, that STAR format that we mentioned, that applies to every single piece of, your work in these projects.
Absolutely. So for sake of time, let's go to the next one. Thank you, Huda, so much for letting us evaluate your portfolio. That's really brave. So I really appreciate it. Here's another one that was sent in, Joanna. First of all, I'm loving the design. It is so hard as a designer. This is why you don't design for designers, because I'm going to be like, oh my God, I love this. I love the colors and everything. And I'm like, going to just be like, okay, sure. But I think as a recruiter, like, what are you seeing here?
Yeah, no, I mean, taking it in, it looks great. If you could scroll just a little bit. Yeah, I mean, first of all, I really do like even though it's a little minuscule, but the movements between each of those little projects, that really caught my eye. That's engaging to me. So it definitely makes me a little more invested in looking further. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to let you pick one that kind of catches your eye, and we kind of just talk through that.
So one of the things that you said to me a long time ago was you don't look at it about pages.
Yeah, I don't.
And what do you feel when you see basically an about page at the very beginning?
I am not against it. I'm not for it either. But a lot of times everyone's going to say, hi, I'm so-and-so. Yeah, I know. I looked at your LinkedIn first before I came here. So I am aware of who you are. And I think it's totally fine, having that little snippet about you. But I do really try to be as inclusive as possible. I don't want to have any type of initial bias going into it. And that's really hard for recruiters to do. And we have to be really thoughtful about stuff like that. We really want to make sure that we're really targeting your work and knowing that you're able to fulfill what's being asked of the job. So I try my best, if as quickly as possible. If it's there, I try to scroll past it.
For sure. Okay, so what are you interested in? I looked at this Chop Suey bookstore because it looks like a real bookstore, and I would really want to know how they would do that. Yeah, me too. So that's the first thing I would look for. I also did love the interactions too. That was pretty cool. I love how the MacBook is matching the color of the thing.
I love that.
Yeah, that's a really intriguing detail. Um, love the roles, love the tools, love the timeline. There is a problem statement. It's a little long.
And I think it should be okay. I mean, that's going to
Mhm.
be the important piece. I need to understand the purpose of this. Um, and, as I'm kind of just going through it, I'm tying back to that problem statement. So, as long as it's not like a novel, your problem statements, I think it's okay. Her length is fine.
Cool. Love
Love
that
that
business
already.
goals.
Love it.
Yes,
I see
business
that.
goals. Please, everyone, right now, write down in your notebook, I need to put business goals in my portfolio.
I
Um,
smart. She gets it. She understands, you know, translating business into design is her objective right now. So in her mind, she's like, I need to make sure what I'm about to do is going to relate to the business. And that's great.
Absolutely. This looks good. I really like how digestible things are.
Oh, yes.
Um, you know,
Oh,
I like how this is I
sorry.
like how this is really succinct. Listen, everybody, please know this as well. You do not have to put your entire user persona
Yeah, you don't.
into your portfolio. User journey map is great. Love the illustrations. Yeah, I'm trying to find some holes to poke through here, but I'm not really finding any right now. Um, I would love to see what it was like to work with the client,
Yeah.
or what the client's view was it about it. Yeah, I like the reflections. I kind of want to go back to the problem statement and business goals though at the very end and see if we met them,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Are you hitting those targets?
Mm-hmm. So what wonderful, Juliana. That was a great portfolio as well. Let me go ahead and pick one more. I'm just going to pick the last one that we had. I'm so sorry that we can't get to all of them. Um, Here's another one that was sent in. Oh, it may not be working. Kevin, I'm sorry. I'm going to go to a different one just for time. Here we go.
Ooh,
Spicy. I
I
like
like
it.
it. Okay, so this is definitely something that is going to make me laugh already, as you can tell. But like we mentioned before, yes, I've already know your name, but something that cheeky that shows personality, and you kind of need that as a designer sometimes. So, or all the time.
Yeah, I'm really honestly impressed with the the use of white space. I'm
Hmm.
impressed with the use of hierarchy here, visual hierarchy. I'm impressed with the color palette that is matching the rest of your stuff. Very important. As well as I can tell that I'd be able to have a conversation with you, and I think that that's pretty cool. I also love that there's no picture here. I don't know why. I just think I like to be like, hey, like I want to look at your work. I don't want to have to you know, have a bias or whatever. I just want to be like, you seem cool in text. Let's move on.
Yeah, but
Right?
let's mention like the storytelling already
Mm-hmm.
about
Mm-hmm.
him, but the typography. Like he specifically wants you to focus in on this. You can call me rad. I know your portfolio is about to be rad. At least I hope so. But having that focus as a reader, as a user, that's really important too. Those little things that are really important to have.
Yeah, like if you're going to say that you're a product designer, creator, and storyteller, man, I want to hear those stories, right?
Yeah, totally.
I'm going to click on this one
She,
because it's
sorry, rat. Okay,
she.
she. So sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry if we get some of that stuff wrong. Um, we're just clicking links here. But yeah, project overview is great. Having a goal So this tells a lot about what's going to happen. Maybe add a problem statement. I can read all of this, but then I'm creating the problem statement in my head. And if I have to create the problem statement in my head, then that means you didn't do it well enough. But I'm glad all you'd have to do is add that right here, because you've already kind of noted what it is. But love this. I'm loving the visual hierarchy. Ooh.
They're doing a really good job. I love, for some reason, seeing that diamond model is so nice. It's a great visual representation of just how she's planning to execute this. Now, granted, it doesn't have to be a blueprint like we mentioned before. You can kind of jump into these things as long as you have those foundation. But I really do like seeing that you're outlining this. You understand the design process, and also those little numbers there too. Sometimes if you click on them, they'll jump right into it. I love those for some reason.
Oh my god!
I just think something about clicking through certain projects, having that interaction is really great to have.
Absolutely. I'm guessing this is Webflow. I'm guessing this is Webflow. Just so everyone knows, I think that I actually, in the poll, I saw today that most people are using Webflow. Is that true? Let me see here. Yes. So most people are using Webflow who are here today. You know, I'd say 6 years ago, it would have been everyone using Squarespace. So it is really cool because Webflow is really hard to see people start utilizing that.
You know what I'm going to tell this person? You really should look into being a design strategist.
I think so too. Or
she honestly has just such a great understanding of research methods and approaches that really should be a field that you really should look into.
I'm digging this competitor now. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, this is really, 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 really interesting. So thank you for sharing this. It's really interesting to have, there is a narrative here. So we're reaching the narrative. We're not even in define or design or deliver yet. I think this might be a little bit long. That's the one statement I have that's negative. Yeah. I mean, it's good that these are up here, but the narrative is here. And not only the narrative, you are basically teaching a masterclass in design process, which on one side of it makes this a very long portfolio piece. But on the other hand of it, like, I don't know, I'm learning from you. And I think that goes beyond really what, I can even teach.
This is very well-rounded. I mean, even if you get to her UI portion of things, that just the color palette choices, the typography choices, I mean, the illustrations that she has to go with it. I mean, she is tying back to pretty much the brand in itself and giving it a voice. This is a rad job.
This is a really great job.
Yeah.
If you ever, I don't think people do enough narrative on the branding or talk about the branding as well. So this is really cool. So for sake of time, I'm so sorry. We have to say goodbye. I'm going to go ahead and just scroll down for a little bit more just to see the final product because I feel like we all want to see it. And wow.
Killed it.
What a great project.
Slayed. Fantastic.
Very, very good job. Makes me want to, be able to use my hands and do things.
I would call this person, to be honest with you. I would.
So there you go. You heard it. You heard it from a recruiter yourself.
She does usability testing.
And you have to have usability testing. And then we have the hi-fi that you can actually go through. So that's really cool as well. With affinity mapping, always have affinity mapping. And then lessons learned, future roadmaps, and then a marketing campaign. What are you doing?
Who are you?
What are you doing to us? Nobody look at my portfolio after this.
You inspired me to be a designer. This is great.
Wow. All right. Well,
Great job.
that was a really great way to wrap up everything. I just want
Yeah.
to say thank you so much for everyone that ended up sending in anything. If you are interested, please go ahead and send some stuff over to us if you want, and we'll try to get back to you. And that is about it. I have maybe a question. I don't know what just happened. I guess the question kind of went away. Oh, Q&A.
Yep.
Thank you for this wonderful session. I wonder how to approach rejections when there is no feedback given. Oh, I want to improve my application, but I don't know how.
Yeah. And that's typical of, a lot of businesses. From a legal standpoint as well. It's going to be really, really hard. The best way to do it sometimes is kind of ask for it in the interview process, kind of asking, is there any hesitations about my candidacy moving forward? Sometimes if they want to, they can provide that feedback as to what they may have wanted to see a little bit more of, but actively listening in that interview. If you're hearing things that they're asking a lot of questions about, that might be an opportunity for you to, kind of take that as homework and work on it. But yeah, rejection is no fun for anyone, and not having that feedback is even worse. But
absolutely. If you want to drop your LinkedIn, Kirstie, so that people
yeah,
can connect with you, that would be great. And then we'll wrap up. I just want to say thank you so much to everybody for joining. I guess it was Uxfolio and not Webflow. So very good job utilizing that. Thank you once again, everyone. And there you go. I'll let you drop it in the link to your LinkedIn in there. And
there we go.
Yeah, feel free to send us your portfolios and afterwards, and we will definitely get to writing you some notes just to say thanks for coming around and hearing us talk for an hour.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate this. Loved it.
And thank you, Kirstie. It was really awesome. So can't wait to talk again.
Of course. Bye, guys.
See ya. Thank you.